Tensions continue to rise between Russia and Ukraine as more Russian troops have made their way to the Ukrainian border. Now, the United States is considering doing the same, sending some troops. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining once again from Los Angeles, California. Lisa, the Biden administration was discussing sending up to 5,000 troops to Eastern Europe and the Baltic states.
They're still weighing out the pros and cons on this one, but yes, the option that remains on the table is to send 3 to 5,000 troops over to de-escalate the situation. What they were hoping to do is to use diplomacy and to use, those nice flowery words and rhetoric that the Obama administration used to do, and hope that something like this would just go away on its own. But obviously, Putin is a different type of statesman, and it's not going away. So the talks that were arranged between the White House and Moscow failed up to now, and now, while all options remain on the table, we do hear from Washington, D.C. that they would prefer, obviously, to de-escalate this through diplomacy, using leverage to talk about different things with the Russians, and to hopefully not have to send the troops over.
Now, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says there's hope of finding consensus such as arms control and the placement of missile systems in Europe, despite their standoff over Ukraine.
Yeah, so that's exactly what he's hoping to do, to say, well, Putin has a lot of interest globally. I mean, connect the dots, right? If you look at all these different hotspots around the world where the Russians have a hand in what's going on, well, maybe we can sit down and talk to them. Maybe we can use this situation to offer some incentive. Maybe we can talk about arms control. Maybe we can talk about some other topics that interest the Russians so that they do not go and bother the Ukrainians once again. But you have to look back at history and look at the fixation that the Russians have over Ukraine and over controlling Ukraine. So it's really no surprise that right now, when they do sense weakness from the White House, this would be the time to start, inching towards Ukraine as they have in past months, and obviously now it's come to a head. So they're either going to go in, or they have something in mind that they want, that they will use this to leverage. But either way, the Russians know they have the upper hand right now.
Now, the U.S. State Department has ordered the evacuation of American citizens from Ukraine amid the threat of a Russian military invasion, Lisa. Also, a travel warning to Ukraine was issued.
Yeah, well, this is what the White House is good at, right? Evacuating. When in doubt, evacuate, and that's what we did in Afghanistan. And that's these are the warnings that are always issued from the State Department very quickly after we see some escalation in parts of the world. Look, it's not a mistake. Obviously, we want to get American citizens and those who are close to the United States out of harm's way. We don't want people traveling there unknowingly to get themselves caught up in some sort of heightened tensions between the two countries. But at the same time, this shows a cowering down, right? This shows our enemies see this, and they see, well, very quickly the United States, will withdraw. Very quickly they'll get their assets out, and you can't in the same breath say we're going to withdraw and then say we're going to send troops. Well, we have to have some sort of plan before we go forward and start announcing the withdrawal. And they sense this weakness. I can't say this enough. In the arena of foreign policy, we have to lead with leadership and lead with strength. And that is not the message that is currently coming out of the White House.
Now, Lisa, a second shipment of U.S. weapons has arrived in Ukraine. The weapons are part of a $200 million security assistance package U.S. President Joe Biden authorized, back in December?
Yes. So obviously this is moving in this direction. And Joe Biden approved this 200 million, as you said, package, hoping to work together with the other NATO partners to stop this. We knew that it was moving in this direction, right? As much as the Russians wanted to tell us that they were doing military drills and this was nothing, we knew that this is the direction they were moving in. So the second shipment of arms just reached Ukraine. This is an escalation, right? So if we do see action by the Russians this week, it is no surprise. They are seeing this as an escalation when the United States, when the NATO allies are providing arms to the Ukrainians. Well, they either have to go in and seize those arms, or they have to fight them. So, it's an escalation, and I hope that the White House understands this, and they understand the calculations involved in escalating the situation, and not escalating in one instance and then taking a step back and saying we still want to employ diplomacy, we still want to sit down, we still want to de-escalate in a peaceful manner. Yes, we do want to de-escalate in a peaceful manner, but we do have to understand the consequences and the optics of sending over all of these weapons to the Ukrainians, of taking such a position pro-Ukraine, and then again having to deal with the consequences when it comes to Russia.
So we talked about the Biden administration potentially sending 3,000 to 5,000 troops to support Ukraine. Lisa, do we know at this point if other NATO allies are also considering sending troops?
Yeah, so the UK has come out to say that they are also considering sending troops. I will say that the UK intelligence came out over the weekend to say that they have a source that has told them that the Russians have immediate plans of replacing the Ukrainian leader with a Russian leader. And this is huge, right? I think it speaks volumes to the fact that Putin, as we've known, again, very, very crafty and shrewd statesman, has had a long-term plan. He plays the global map like a chessboard. He knows exactly what he's doing. So if he does make any moves, we have to know that they are incredibly deliberate, incredibly strategic, and it's no accident, right? So, like I said, with the sending over of arms, with the announcement of the deliberation of sending over troops, with the U.S. and the NATO partners, this already is an escalation in the eyes of the Russians. So we will see what their move is. But again, I will say, and I will reiterate, the ball's in their court, and they know it, and they will act accordingly.
As Israel potentially talked about also helping out, the tensions continue to rise between Russia and Ukraine, maybe sending some technology?
Not only technology, but not many people know this, but there are I should say, Jewish Ukrainians in Ukraine, and they have talked about helping to evacuate some of them and bringing them over to Israel. Many people don't know this, but in the 80s, there was a huge movement of moving Russian and Ukrainian Jews to Israel, getting them out of harm's way in different parts of Eastern Europe. And in this case, Israel is obviously at the forefront again. Small country the size of New Jersey, as we always say, but offering to help, offering with the evacuations, offering with whatever humanitarian aid that they can provide. So I think as we move closer, this will become obviously a global effort. I think it is in everyone's interest not to allow Russia to move past its own borders and to increase its influence. Perhaps the Iranian regime will be on their side, but other than that, I think that the United States will have a lot of collaboration with NATO and other global partners.
So, Lisa, what kind of retaliation would the United States and her NATO allies unleash on Russia once the situation escalates to the point of no return? Let me ask you something. Could we see an all-out war?
Right. So, we don't want to see an all-out war, and obviously that's the message we're getting from the White House. But if it has to come to that, again, the Ukrainians getting these weapons, the Russians not backing down, it does look like we're headed towards that kind of heightened conflict. At the same time, the United States and other partners have announced sanctions towards the Russians. It doesn't seem like it has scared them much, but in the long term, it will affect them. It will affect their economy. It will affect their ability to move as they do freely throughout the globe. We also can sanction their assets around the world, right? We know that the Russians are expanding, and that is their hegemonic, dream and endeavors are to expand and to create this Russian empire of sorts. So, we have short-term, medium-term, and long-term. We can talk about, the cyber attacks that the Russians have launched on many important infrastructures. So the Russians have been, provoking for a very, very long time. This is nothing new, but it has not been obviously the military war that we talked about. These are more modern technologies that they have used, and to kind of inch towards Ukraine in a way that shows what the next steps will be. Well, I think it behooves the United States and world allies to really keep up with them and to mirror their steps. And if it has to go to escalation, it will go that way. But when we announced that 3,000 to 5,000 troops will be sent, there are, according to Ukraine, over 100,000 troops and other assets that are lined up on the Ukrainian border. So again, we have to look at this and see if we do need to respond, that we do respond in a way that's meaningful and victorious. So we shall see.
Let's shift gears for just a moment here, Lisa, and talk about the Iran nuclear agreement. Government officials say a new deal is highly unlikely without the release of U.S. prisoners. Tell me more about that.
Yes, this is Robert Malley. He's the number one negotiator at the table with the Iranian regime, and we know that he's very pro-deal. He wants to walk away with a deal. That being said, the optics are so bad, the circumstances are so egregious around this deal, with the Iranian regime flexing its muscles and really calling the shots here, that he has come out to say, we don't think a deal will go through unless the four U.S. Citizens who are held by the Iranian regime are released. Now, he did reiterate that these two deals are separate. That's exactly what the Obama administration did. They did not negotiate human rights or the hostages or anything else together with the nuclear deal. They didn't want to mix all of it together. They didn't want to conflate the issues. But what they did do was try to put pressure and say, if you want these bags of cash that we've got, well, it would look good if you released our hostages as well. And that's what's going on here. The Iranian regime plays this game. That's why they collect these hostages. These are pawns that they can then negotiate with. So now you have, Mali coming out and saying it's not part of the deal, but we really can't see a deal going through unless. So he's basically putting down an informal precondition to the deal, and we're happy to see that because honestly, the Iranian regime has really run circles around the United States and the world powers. If we thought that 2015 was a bad deal, what we are headed towards is a much worse deal because you have an Iranian regime that thinks it has the upper hand, that is calling the shots, that has not backed down on its behavior, that has not backed down on the support of global terrorism, that has not backed down on the enrichment of uranium. What we are finding at Natanz and Fordow, these are their nuclear sites, their plants. They have not backed down on anything. If anything, we have seen that they have gone deeper and they are enriching uranium at a higher percentage. And what have we done with the Biden administration? All they have done is really strip the sanctions down. They have watered down any sort of economic punishment to the point where, again, Iranian regime, just like all the other enemies we have around the world, they are taking advantage of the time they have, the administration that's currently in the White House, and the lax foreign policy that they are showing and they are, moving forward with. So this is a positive sign for Mali to come out and say, we really will not go forward unless you release U.S. hostages. It really should be as simple as that, right, Hal?
Yeah, if only it was that simple, you're right. Now, speaking of flexing their muscles, not just Iran, but North Korea, as we've talked about in the past, firing more of those ballistic missiles, which is a major concern for South Korea. Any potential talks of Kim Jong-un and maybe U.S. President Joe Biden getting together or other government officials?
Yeah, well, North Korea's gone completely rogue. Uh, Before the Trump administration came in and said we want to sit down with North Korea was a mystery to us. We didn't know much about them. I mean, we tried to piece together what they had with regards to their military arsenal. We tried to figure out from South Korea what kind of intel we had about Kim Jong Un and their royal family, so to speak. But we didn't know much because they wanted to remain in isolation. Trump came in and said, I want to sit down with Kim Jong Un, and he had the ability to do so. They became pen pals, if you remember. They exchanged notes, but they also sat down face to face. And although nothing came of it, in the aftermath, because that diplomacy was not followed up with, now we have a situation where the North Koreans are no longer in hiding, but they are almost putting it in our faces that they're able to carry out these missile tests, that they're able to show us what they have, and they're able to say, this is who we are, and we're going to continue doing what we do. And really, again, provoking, but taking advantage of time and the foreign policy that is coming out of Washington, D.C. So, there's so much going on in the realm of foreign policy, and all of it really does tie back to a weak foreign policy from the United States. When they sense weakness, they will go on to do what they want to do. And guess what rogue dictators want to do? They want to provoke the rest of the world. They want to grow. They want to expand their empires. And that's what we're seeing.
Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces tightened their siege of a prison housing ISIS suspects after the inmates took over the facility.
Yeah, this is a crazy story. So they took over the facility. They killed about 17 of the guards who are on the Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces. But then, with the help of the U.S. And the blessing of obviously the Western forces, they were able to go in and retaliate, and they killed about 100 of these inmates that were, doing this coup. And it just goes to show this is more of ISIS planning and strategizing and growing. They're small in number, they are, but it does deserve a headline, and it does deserve to say this is what's going on in Syria, and the chaos has not subsided. You think about the people who live in that area. You think about the daily bombings that happen, the suicide bombings that happen, and here you have an ISIS prison. Imagine if all those prisoners had gotten out. Well, thank God for the Kurds. They've always been our partner on the ground. They've always been our intelligence partners, and more so in terms of manpower, they've been, and women power, I should say, the Peshmerga fighters. They've been our really our boots on the ground. So thank goodness they were able to really end this situation before these militants got out. And again, imagine each one of those militants, what they're capable of doing. So it would have been a very bad situation.
Yeah, it would have been catastrophic, absolutely. Foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks for joining us today from Los Angeles, California.
My pleasure.